Peace to the 12. Y'all see the title. Alright, black people in Mexico before the Spanish. Black before the conquistadors. Yeah, alternative title is Black before the conquistadors. But yeah, man, you have black people in Mexico before the Spanish, like the title says. And this is kind of like a ongoing series I've done. I did something called Black Before Rome, where I proved that the Iturians were actually of a dark complexion akin to the Negroes. You can go watch that video more for that. But yeah, you have black people that were there for the Spanish, and I'm going to prove it. Now, a lot of people, they say the Africans of Mexico from slavery to 2015. So they want to start off from slavery, like they always like to do. Like I tell you, they always want to push that black equals slave narrative, which we're going to touch on that in here too. So I went ahead and asked Google. And I said, when did Africans come to Mexico? So-called Africans. I don't even like using the word. But when did Africans come to Mexico? It says, in the 1500s and early 1600s, New Spain, colonial Mexico, had one of the highest importation rates of enslaved Africans to the Americas, leading to the large populations in the cities. All right, that's where they say you get Afro-Mexicans from, right? 1519, the Spanish first brought Africans to Mexico in 1519. So that's what it's telling me, where the first so-called black people came from. That's what they tell you. Oh, the reason there's Afro-Mexicans is because of the giant slave trade, right? So, is that true? Is this true? If you've been watching my channel for a long time, no, it's not true, man. That is a false statement. That's a narrative, man. All right. In fact, I'm going to prove it, and you'll see. You'll see. So, this is a guy named Guillermo Dupaix. Probably pronounced his name wrong, but I'm going to say Dupaix. Guillermo Dupaix, he's an archaeologist. Born in 1746, died in 1818. So in the 1700s, we have an archaeologist. He wrote a series of books titled Antiquities of Mexico, Volume 1 through various, right? The volume we're going to be focusing on is Antiquities of Mexico, Volume 6. Volume 6 by Guillermo Dupaix. Now, we're going to read what this says. Now, I know you people are probably like, man, we can't see what this says. Don't worry, I got you. All right, we're going to zoom in. All right. And this is what it's about to say. Proving once again that the history that they tell you is a lie. Okay? Or I should say the what do you call it? Mainstream history is pure narrative. It's a lie. Now, this is from Antiquities of Mexico, Volume 6. And this is page 185. Look what he says. Highlighted portions for sake of time, as always. It is a certain fact that America had been colonized from Africa previously to the arrival of the Spaniards in that continent, since Negroes were discovered in some of its provinces by Balboa and by others. Okay? So he just straight up tells you that there was Africa, so-called Africans had colonized America prior to the Spaniards. That's what he said. Their presence in that continent in a considerable body, where they carried on perpetual hostilities with the neighboring Indian tribes. So these so-called black people that were here were beefing with the Indian tribes. Is very unsatisfactorily accounted for by this supposition of a chance shipwreck. And we may here remark that whilst questions of little importance as regard the history of America are discussed, and he's about to let you know that this fact that he just stated, this fact, and what he called it, he said it was a certain fact. What is a certain fact? Well, certain means known for sure. Fact means proven to be true. So he knows for sure that it's proven to be true that there were so-called black people there before the Spaniards. Okay? Before the Spaniards made contact with the continent. Okay? And once again, the Spaniards made contact in 1519 of February. Alright? So before that, they had so-called black people there. Okay, let me read that one more time. It is a certain fact that America had been colonized from Africa previously to the arrival of the Spaniards in that continent, since the Negroes were discovered in some of the provinces by Balboa and by others. Balboa was an explorer, a conquistador. We'll touch on him later. All right. As regard, now watch, he's going to say that they hide the history. As regards the history of America are discussed at great length by Spanish writers. You got all these Spanish writers writing about America. Watch what he says. The most curious facts are often passed over in total silence. So they're silent on the fact that there were so-called blacks over there before the Spaniards. You see that? Nor is it easy to explain the motives for this reserve. See? So it is in total silence. All right? Mention having been made of colonization of America, whether accidental or not, by Negroes. It wasn't accidental. It deserves to be noticed that in a Mexican painting which once formed part of the Historical Museum of Boturani, a facsimile of which is continued the present work. Now watch this. And which represents the migration of the Mexicans from Aztlan, the country of their ancestors. A figure very like that of a Negro. Alright? So the country of their ancestors, they had a figure that was akin to a Negro. Paddling a canoe occurs. The thick curly hair on the head is very remarkable, as the hair of the Indians is naturally straight. So there was a differentiation. And it seems to have been the intention of the Mexican painter decidedly to indicate that peculiarity. So the Mexican painter deliberately painted a picture of a Negro with woolly afro hair. Okay? And Balboa, he mentioned Balboa and others discovered Negroes. Balboa was born in 1475, and in 1513 he went in search of gold through the Pacific Ocean. All right? And he also stated what? That the Spanish writers are in total silence when speaking on this. Why? Because they want to keep it on the down low. All right, to keep something very secret, not tell another person. All right. In the scriptures, our people are known as the hidden ones. All right, they hide. All right, but anyway, we'll touch on that later. Keep it silent, meaning what? To not tell anyone about something. So they don't want to tell anybody that there were black people here before the so-called conquistadors, before the Spaniards arrived. Okay, believe it or not. All right. Godfrey Higgins touches on this same fact. Godfrey Higgins, another dude born in the 1700s, so-called white man, born in the 1700s. He wrote a book called Anacalypsis. Now, recently, I just figured out that there was actually an Anacalypsis Volume 2 that I didn't know about. I usually quote from Anacalypsis Volume 1. Well, this is Volume 2 by Godfrey Higgins. And he was an antiquarian. He was an historian. Okay? So let's see what he has to say. Page 35. Book 1, chapter 4, section 13. It is necessary to observe here that tribes, both of Negroes and bearded men, were found in South America. All right, so the Negroes and bearded men were found in South America. Now, he's about to touch on this guy when he said they keep total silence. He's about to touch on this same fact that they're just hiding it. Okay, they hide this truth. Watch this. He says, my reader has only to look to the figures of the crucifixes which I have given, and to reflect for one moment upon the admitted anxiety of the Spaniards. So they were nervous. The admitted anxiety of the Spaniards and the popes to keep the knowledge of these things from the European world. So they wanted to keep knowledge of these things from the European world. In other words, they wanted to hide it. All right, I also want to touch on this. You see this right here? The Mexican language is so full of Hebrew words as to be almost Hebrew. All right, so the original Mexican language was similar to Hebrew. I wanted to touch on that too. All right, so you had the Pope and the Spaniards. They were anxious and had anxiety to keep this knowledge from the European world. All right, they wanted to keep it on the hush, keep it on the low. All right, so-called black history is hidden. Okay, a lot of so-called black history is hidden. A lot of our achievements, empires, all type of things, dynasties are hidden, believe it or not. Okay, and the scriptures actually speaks on this. We are known as the hidden ones. Okay, Psalms chapter 83. All right, we're going to go verse 1 through 4. Psalms chapter 83. A song or psalm of Asaph. Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make it to moat, and they that hate thee have lifted up their heads. So our enemies are in agreement. They are in faction. Now watch this. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. All right, they've consulted against the hidden ones. We are hidden. They have said, come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. So they want to cut off Israelite history. They want to cut off our imprint, our footprint, our footnote that we left on all these different continents and all these different regions. All right, and they have consulted against the hidden ones. We're known as the hidden ones. All right, because our history is hidden. Look, Strong's, KJ translates Strong's, hidden ones. Secret places, privy, secret. To hide, treasure, treasure or store up. To hide, treasure up. To lie hidden. To hide from discovery. All right. So our history is hidden. We're known as the hidden ones. Okay? And why is our history hidden so much? Because they want to force feed us this damn slavery narrative. All right? Black equals slave. You're a slave. You always were a slave. All right? Before the good so-called white man showed up, you niggas were swinging on trees like Tarzan with bones in your noses. That's what they want to do, like some Mike Lewinog type shit. Y'all ever seen that cartoon, Mike Lewinog? You know, that's what I want you to think. Just keep force feeding that slave narrative. All right? That's why you type in slave history. You type in slave history, you get all these pictures of black people. All right? Because what they really want you to think is that black equals a slave. Even though, and that's why they make all these damn slave movies. Look at this, 111 rows of slave movies. Top 10 slave movies of all time. 10 slave movies. So you got all these hundreds of slave movies, man. All right, they want to say that black equals slave. They want to force feed the slave narrative. Even though the term slave actually goes back to the term Slav, which was the so-called white man. All right, the term was actually first applied to the so-called white man, to the Slavs. All right, so even though when you type in the word slave, you go to etymology. Etymology means origin of the word. You go to etymology of the word slave as a noun, it'll tell you. All right, 1300s. Slave. All right. Originally Slav. See, Slav. Slavs sold into slavery. All right. By conquering peoples. All right. Yeah, the Slavs. Those people that you have in a place known as the Russian steppe. Yeah, the Slavs. All right. Slav hunts. And Slav was the most prized of human goods. Slavonic slave. Okay. So the term slave actually comes from the term Slav. And those Slavs were so-called white people. All right, and those Slavs were being traded by so-called black people, by the so-called Arabs, and they were traded by the Asians, like the Mongolians, man. Believe it or not, that's a video for another day. But yeah, so even though they want to make you think black equals slave, in reality, his ancestors are the first of the slaves. All right, here's some artworks: a slave sale, so-called white woman. All right, in the black slave markets. All right, the white slave artwork. See the so-called black people in the background. Jean-Jules Antoine Lecomte de Nouaille. Can't pronounce that. Jose Jimenez Aranda. All these artworks. These are so-called Caucasian slaves, man. All right, and when you watch that movie, Planet of the Apes, I might do a breakdown on that movie at another time. When you watch that movie, Planet of the Apes represent the so-called black people in rulership during the Middle Ages. Believe it or not. Because yes, you did have black people in rulership in the Middle Ages, in the so-called Dark Ages. And I already know that already goes over a lot of people's head, but I'll prove that at another time. But yeah, this represents the rulership that we had over the Slavs. Believe it or not. And Yugoslavia is associated with so-called Caucasians. All right? Thomas William Shore lets you know. Thomas William Shore wrote a book titled Origin of the Anglo-Saxon Race by Thomas William Shore, a man born in the 1800s. All right, he was a geologist and antiquarian. Now, he talks about, on page 104 of Origins of the Anglo-Saxon Race, he talks about the mixed brown people surrounded by others of somewhat fair complexions. He talks about the darker races that came to the Anglo-Saxons or Danes. But when he goes down to here, he says, all the Slav nations are not dark. All right, and he says that they're fair skinned. So all the Slav nations are not dark. All the Slav nations were so-called Caucasians. And by the way, while I'm touching on this book, he also tells you about the black Vikings. Yeah, I said it. There were black Vikings. Okay? Origins of the Anglo-Saxon race. All right. We're going to go to here. Right here. It says, we're going to page 75. They are brown in aspect, while the Frisians are fair, and they are supposed to be descendants of a remnant of the very ancient brown race of Europe. Alright, brown people of Holland. Now you go to page 111, highlighted portion. The consideration of the evidence that people of a brunette complexion, meaning brown, were among the Anglo-Saxon settlers in England leads on that people of a still darker hue, the dark, black, or brown black settlers. So you have so-called black people. Alright? The original Anglo-Saxons were so-called black. Do a video on that another time. You know, like I said, most of the history you learn is a lie, believe it or not. Alright, go to this highlighted portion. Blackman Stone. Settlers have come to these places by water rather than to a survival of black people of the old Celtic race having been left in them. Yeah, the old Celtic race was so-called black as well. Alright, which means what? All these other people that say they've been there forever, they're just LARPing. What does LARPing mean? When someone is pretending to be something they're not. Playing make-believe. They have to pretend or imagine that things are better than they really were. Yeah, the original people over there were so-called black people. Okay? That's why the chapter says, our darker forefathers. What's forefather mean? Beforehand. Alright, the father before. Alright? So when you watch Thor, you got you watch Thor, you watch that show Vikings. Alright? It's just pure LARP. Pure LARP. And notice, there's no black people in the show Vikings. I mean, I've never seen this show and I'd never watch it. But there are no black people in the show Vikings. Even though he mentions the brown, black, dark, black settlers. Alright? For more information on that, I've done plenty of videos. White people are not from Europe. Real black Vikings, black Europeans, original European. I've done many videos on that. If you're looking for more information on that. You know, and I could have been in the video because I done proved that black people were there for the Spanish. But I'm just dropping dimes on other subjects. We're actually going to touch back on this other subject later on. And this actually has some relevancy because we know that the Vikings, they say that Vikings discovered America. The Vikings indeed explored America 500 years before Columbus's arrival. Alright. So the Vikings were there before the Spanish as well. And guess what? Remember, they said that black people were there before the conquistadors. That's because the Vikings were so-called black. Touches on that in this book, Origins of the Anglo-Saxon Race, Thomas William Shore, page 113. Blackman Stone of Dorset Coast. As late as the time of Domesday Survey, we meet with records of people apparently named after their dark complexions. Okay, swarthy complexions. In the Irish annuals, the black Vikings are called Dub Genti or black Gentiles. Gentiles. These black Gentiles on some occasions fought against other plunderers. They fought against the fair Gentiles. In the year 851, all right, that's 150 years before the arrival of the Vikings in America. In 851 AD, the black Gentiles came to the Othcaloth, Dublin. 852, told that 8 ships these days Dugati were victorious. The black Vikings appear at this time to have had settlement in or close to Dublin. Alright, so point blank, man. 877 black Gentiles. Okay, think about that. Alright, and that's why in the comic books of Marvel, Heimdall is so depicted as a so-called white man, and yet when you watch the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they have Heimdall played by Idris Elba, a so-called black man. Alright, that's why they have what's her name, Tessa Thompson or something, playing Valkyrie, the comic book character, even though she's blinded. That's why they have played black characters. Alright, that's why they have black characters playing these roles, man, believe it or not. Alright, and I know there was a lot of mad at there's a lot of butthurt Caucasian nerds, you know, that seen this and were like, why is she playing Valkyrie? This is not fit the source material. You know, I seen a Negro who's like, oh man, they want to get rid of Norse mythology, the whitest culture ever. No, sir. Okay? So, but y'all can stay mad, alright? Hoes can stay mad. We don't give a damn. The truth's coming out. Because we're at the end anyway, and all this truth's going to come out. Alright? Now, let's get back to the topic. Back to Guillermo Dupaix. Page 291. Antiquities of Mexico. Notes. Page 291. He says, there is a region not past 2 days' journey distance from Caraqua in which they found only black Moors, and those exceeding fierce and cruel. They suppose that in time past certain black Moors sailed thither out of Ethiopia to rob, and when he says Ethiopia, he means Africa, because at the time Africa was called Ethiopia. Even though I don't even believe these people were from Ethiopia, but this is his assessment. They suppose that in the time past, certain black Moors sailed thither out of Ethiopia to rob. And notice, to rob. We know that the Vikings were known for robbing, but we know that the Vikings were known for plundering. But that anyway. They suppose that in time past, certain black Moors sailed thither out of Ethiopia to rob, and that by shipwreck or some other chance they were driven in those mountains. The inhabitants of Caraqua live in continual war and debate with these black men. Gomorrah, in describing the expedition of Balboa in search of the South Sea, mentions the same blacks, those same blacks. Alright? So Balboa, the guy before them in 1513, see if I can find him. Balboa, born in 1475, in this exploration in 1513, he came across these same so-called black people, okay, that were there before them, okay. And Balboa City is like modern-day Panama, the Panama Canal, first stable European settlement of mankind of South America. And the word Moor in 1755 Samuel Johnson's dictionary, 1755, Moor equals a Negro or blackamoor. All right, a Negro, so-called black man. All right, and let's touch on some more stuff. This is interpretation of same book. Whence some conclude that many Spaniards fled to that country at the period of the destruction of Spain by the Moors. So the Moors, which once again Moors goes back to Negro according to 1755 dictionary. Moors had these Spaniards on the run. All right, but he says he does not credit this, but you know that's his opinion. But page 167, explanations of the Codex Vaticanus. This is all part of Antiquities of this is still all part of Antiquities of Mexico, Volume 6. We're gonna go down to here. He starts to speak about the scriptures, Old Testament, and all and whatnot. But he says, it is remarkable that in these Mexican paintings, the faces of many other figures are black. All right, are black, and I don't have the pictures he's speaking of, but I have pictures of so-called black people in the cities of Mexico, ancient pictures. They're known as the Bonampak murals. You guys can look this up. They're known as the Bonampak murals. Okay, as you can see, these are so-called black people. Bonampak murals, ancient Mayan city, Mexico ruins. So-called black people. So-called black people. Bonampak. Bonampak mural. Bonampak mural. As you can see, they're so-called black people. So you had so-called black people that were in the city of Mexico. Believe it or not. All right, before the conquistadors. All right, even in the Codex Mendoza, a book written in the 1541. This is the Codex Mendoza. You have pictures of so-called black people. All right, then you have the other complected peoples. All right, seeming to be in a place of subservience. Okay, maybe not though. Maybe not subservience, but something. I mean, they're on knees. But regardless, page 224. First, I want to touch on this. He links these people of this place to the Jews. All right, 224, page 224, plate. From all these circumstances, the fact is plain and probable that this nation descends from the Jews, since all the ceremonies of this chapter are, as it were, according to the test of Leviticus. All right, they were doing a lot of Levitical priest things, man. Now watch this. And he talks about Exodus and so on and so forth. But one of the differences which distinguished the one's orders of priests from the other was agreeably to the different nature of the gods whom they served. Because our people have fell into idolatry. Whom they served, these were black. So the gods that they prayed to were black and dirty and filthy and abominable. You know, and I agree they were abominable. But he's putting his prejudices towards black because they were all false gods. There's only one God, that's Yahawah, all right, the Most High, all right, and his only begotten Son is yahawashi, as you all know by now. Most of you do. But yeah, the world's religion and their black gods, the black gods. He mentioned that the key difference, they had a black God, all right, and the gods of the Jews were so-called black too. Because the Most High is a so-called black man, believe it or not. But anyway, well, Godfrey Higgins also touches on the black gods of the Greeks and so on and so forth. Godfrey Higgins, historian, January 30, 1772, same dude I mentioned earlier. All right, this is volume 1 of Ancient Modern Britons, Anacalypsis. Ancient Egyptians, the master of thieves were Negroes. That they were black with curly heads, so yeah, the Egyptians were so-called black. All that stupid ass controversy, but I did videos on that. But we're out of here. A nativist theory of reconsideration of the foregoing pages will show that we have found this is page 399. We have found the black complexion or something relating to it whenever we have approached to the origin of the nations. All right. So the black complexion is through the origin of these nations. The alma mater, the goddess Motamamia, the founders of the oracles, the Memons, or first idols, were always black. Venus, Juno, Jupiter, Apollo, Bacchus, Hercules, Ashtaroth, Adonis, Haru, Apis, Osiris, Ammon, in short, all the wood and stone deities were black. All right, so when he talks about I believe he's talking about the Aztecs. When he talks about how they served a black god, I wonder why. All right, and then page 173 he touches on this as well in his volume 1 of Anacalypsis. He says, Osiris and his bull were black. All the gods and goddesses of Greece. I'll read that again. All the gods and goddesses of Greece were black. The Motamamia is black in the Cappadocius at Rome. And the Monte Fashion Antiquity explained. All right, they were all black. All right, moving on. Notes. Talking about blacks again, page 291. Antiquities of Mexico, volume 6. All right, page 291. It would be surprising if it were fair to presume from the silence of Spanish historians, once again, silence of Spanish historians, either want of information on their part or of research and curiosity on the part of others. Instead of ascribing their reserve to other causes, to find that scarcely any mention is made in their writings of a bearded nation and of blacks. So they scarcely talk about the bearded nation and blacks discovered amongst the Indians. So they keep silence on that. Although a black skin and a bearded visage afford the surest argument of a mixture of foreign blood with that of the smooth and copper-colored Indian race. So he's saying, even though they keep silence, there is a surest argument for the bearded men and the black-skinned people that were amongst the Indians, so-called. Okay, 521 notes. Some interesting remarks respecting two supposed aboriginal races of men, the one black and woolly-haired, and the other of brown complexion of the Peruvians, will be found in the first chapter of the first book of Crawford's history in the Indian archipelago. I actually have that. John Crawford, born in 1783, died 1868. John Crawford wrote a book, History of the Indian Archipelago. I'm going to go to volume 1, where he states, there are two aboriginal races of human beings among the Indian islands. All right, different from each other. All right, different from each other. Like he just said, black and woolly haired, and the other brown complexion for the Peruvians. Okay. Now, before I go, let me talk about the conquistadors. You know about the conquistadors? Believe it or not, You also had black people that were among the conquistadors. Here's a portrait. Codex Azcatian showing the Spanish army in 1519 with Cortez. The black man is unidentified. Many black Spanish and Portuguese citizens were part of both Cortez and Pizarro's armies. Here's a so-called black man right here amongst the conquistadors. So yeah, so-called black people amongst the conquistadors too. But you know, that's all I got right there. You know, just to show and to prove to you guys that yes, black people were in Mexico before the Spanish. Believe it or not, all right, I proved it. Black before the conquistadors. All right, so that's it on that, man. Hopefully that was an edifying lesson. If you didn't know, now you know. And with that, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father, the Most High Yahawah, in the name of His only begotten Son, yahawashi. Yahawah is the name of the Heavenly Father, who is commonly known as God, and yahawashi is the Savior of the nation of Israel, who is commonly known as Jesus Christ, or say Shalom, which means peace. To you brothers doing this work, truth and sincerity. To you elders that's been doing this name before me, and you people that are listening and learning, man. I say peace to the 12. I'm going to get up on out of here. All right, peace.